Hello students, as you are aware, we are dealing with the course guidance and counseling, and this is the second last lecture of week 12, and the topic of discussion is interrelationship studies approach of evaluation. As you are well aware, in this last week, we are talking about the evaluation of the guidance and counseling program by conducting the researches, and we have already discussed one aspect of it, and now we are taking another aspect that is related to the interrelated studies. What are the highlights of this lecture? First of all, we will try to understand the meaning of the interrelationship studies, and under this we will discuss case studies, causal comparative studies, correlational studies approach, and then we will cite certain examples to understand how to conduct the evaluation program by using the research techniques or the research methodology. And then we will also discuss certain limitations of this approach, and then we will conclude our lecture. Let us understand the concept in the beginning. So we are discussing our topic with introduction. The interrelationship studies approach to evaluating guidance and counseling program is a research methodology that examines the connections and correlations between various factors. Take, for example, personal factors, academic factors, social factors, environmental factors, and outcomes of the guidance services. It goes beyond simple cause and effect to understand the complex interconnected influences on a program's effectiveness. So, let us understand it with the help of certain other aspect. So in a nutshell, we can say that it is an approach of evaluation where uh, we are using this particularly to examine the connections and correlation between various factors. What is the correlationship between these factors? So when we are talking about the correlation or trying to find out the relationship between various variables associated to the phenomena, associated the guidance and counseling aspects, then such kinds of the researches basically comes interrelationship studies approach. The research studies which are conducted to explore the relationship between various facts of existing phenomena are termed as interrelationship studies, and these generally include case studies, causal comparative studies, and correlational and prediction studies. Uh, Now we are going to discuss in a little more detail about the case studies. The comprehensive or case studies method of evaluation is designed to assess the changes that have been taken place in an individual in relation to his or her own goals as a result of his exposure to counseling. Case study. When we are talking about the case studies, it is a comprehensive study also called, where we are basically assessing the changes that have been taken place in an individual in relation to his own goals as a result of his exposure to counseling. Okay, what results are impacting on the individual based on their counseling sessions or guidance and counseling sessions. Case study approach has the advantage of emphasizing the individual and its growth. In a case study, the researcher attempts to examine a unit in depth. Case studies are quite useful in guidance and counseling, as the impact of the counseling may be analyzed, keeping in view the various factors associated to the individual personality, family environment, institutional factors, and social factors. So, when we are talking about the case studies on a particular group of students or an individual, because cases can be conducted on individual and case studies can be operated in a group of students who are showing a peculiar characteristic features which are generally in common. So case studies basically gives the opportunity to have an in-depth knowledge of all the factors which are associated to that individual. If we talk about the personality of the individual, it is basically the product of peers, group influences, family influences, institutional factors, and many social factors are also responsible for that. So we have to evaluate the significance of all the factors in order to understand better the changes which we are experiencing in the population of the students. Case study may be related to the individual, as I said to you. It may be related to the individual, a school, family, a group of students with misbehaviors, delinquent students, adolescents, dropouts, or a group of minority students, differently abled students. So these are basically the different kinds of the group. A case study basically gives the idea about various developmental aspects which are influencing the personality of the individual. So when we are studying using the case studies, there are certain aspects or the key aspect associated to it. It will be more clear with few more slides if you will concentrate on this aspect. In-depth understanding. Case studies delve into unique circumstances of the individual or groups, providing a comprehensive understanding of their experiences within the program. So, if you are really interested having a in-depth understanding, then the most important and the most appropriate approach of evaluation is basically the case studies. This approach goes beyond standardized assessments to explore the complexities of personal, social, psychological, and environmental factors that influence a client's journey. So, many factors are involved. We cannot rely on the standardized test or the achievement test for the change of the behavior of the student. Rather, many other factors are also involved in that. So if you are giving counseling session to any individual, then it doesn't mean the resultant output in change of the behavior is the influence of only that factor. There may be some other factors, so we have to take into the deep uh, study in regard to that. Now we are data and we are entering in the data collection. Counselors collect various types of the data by using the student appraisal test techniques like interviews, personal records, rating scales, behavioral observations, and sometimes even video recordings are also done for better understanding of various aspects of the individual. This comprehensive data collection helps track changes in the client's psychological state, behavior, and overall well-being over time. So this data collection is basically assisting the individual to uh, draw a conclusion based on that. Analyzing client's progress. Case studies document the client's journey, including emotional responses, behavioral changes, cognitive shifts, and improvements in specific skills or coping mechanism. When we are basically exploring the individual to the counseling sessions, so these case studies are basically analyzing the progress of the individual or is positive or the positive effects in regard to many aspects. What changes have been seen in their emotional stability, what changes are observed in the behavior, and what cognitive shift or ability to take decisions or insight has been developed, and what are the skills the student has learned, and what coping mechanism he or she has started to use in dealing his or her problems and selecting their and knowing their actual journey or the direction of the journey. So case studies are basically used in depth analysis by collecting appropriate data and analyzing the progress of any program. Take for example, we are conducting a program of guidance and counseling in any particular districts. So the case studies can be conducted on any particular institution or a group of institution to evaluate each and every aspect of the guidance and counseling program. Means we are talking about the objectives, talking about the implementation of the program and the people involved in that program, what techniques have been used, what therapeutic interventions have been given, and in what circumstances they are given, and what was the psychological environment in which the counseling was conducted, both individual as well as group counseling. So these are basically the various aspects of the counseling program. If we are using the case studies to evaluate the utility of the program or the impact of the program, then we have to take in-depth study by collecting the data, and we are analyzing the progress based on that data. So by analyzing this data, counselors can identify patterns, assess the effectiveness of interventions, and make necessary adjustment to improve the program. Another aspect is evaluating progress program effectiveness. Case studies help evaluate the impact of the guidance program on individuals and groups. We can understand what impact it has left on the performance of the student. They provide valuable insights in the program's strengths and weaknesses, informing future program development and implementation, because the observation or the findings of the study will definitely yield the positive suggestions, and the person will be, or the counselor will be able to improve the program. So this is basically the evaluation process. We set certain objectives and we take certain aspects for evaluation by using the case studies, and we are basically evaluating the program's effectiveness based on the findings. So this, they provide valuable insight into the program. We have already discussed this point. This program is particularly useful for understanding long-term effects of guidance and counseling, as such as how to impact students' academic performance, career choices, and overall well-being after they leave the program. Because counseling is conducted for certain reasons, and broadly the reasons are that we are basically providing educational guidance and the counseling to improve their academic performance, and we are also providing the career counseling or the vocational guidance in order to make them better choices. And overall well-being means the improvement in their mental health. They are developing their self-concept. They are improving their uh, confidence level, and their well-being is improved, and their adaptability and adjustment has improved. So these are basically the impact of the programs which we try to evaluate by using the case studies. There are certain ethical considerations in the case studies which we need to keep in our mind. Then maintaining client confidentiality and ensuring the credibility of the evaluation process are crucial aspects of using case studies. Confidentiality of information is highly important. We should not share the confidential information related to the individual which you have gained by using the case study approach of evaluation. This is basically related to the ethical considerations, and we have taken a separate lecture on ethical and legal aspects of the counseling guidance and counseling program. So counselors must obtain informed consent from the clients, explain how their data will be used, and protect their privacy. Conducting the research by using the personal data of the students and the personal data of the programmer who has implemented that program uh, is very important, and for that we need to follow certain ethical considerations. If you are using that data for wrong purposes, then it is against the ethical principles, and in near future no individual or organization will be able to share the data with any future researcher, and the task of the evaluation or the research will definitely affected with that. Second is important type of studies in interrelationship approach is causal comparative studies. Causal comparative studies. According to Kerlinger, causal comparative research may be defined as that research in which the independent variable or variables, means there can be one variable or there can be a group of variables, have already occurred, and in which the researcher starts with the observation of the dependent variable or variables. Such kinds of the researches, causal comparative studies, are also called ex post facto researches. For example, the impact has already been taken, and now you are evaluating the causes of the intervention. Take for example the student's behavior. We have exposed to the student to the counseling sessions, and we are basically evaluating the impact of counseling sessions on the performance of the student. Okay, what basically the factor was related to that. In a nutshell, in a common example, we can understand. Okay, we take for example, we are evaluating the tuberculosis after it has already taken place. Okay, what were be the probable causes of the tuberculosis, whether it was because of the smoking or it was of any other reasons. So ex post or causal comparative studies are basically related to that aspect. A causal comparative study in the evaluation of guidance and counseling programs aims to determine if there is a relationship between program participation and its specific outcomes. People are participating in the program, and is there a specific outcome of that? Is there any relationship in that? It compares groups that received the program with those that did not, examining if the program had an discernible impact or positive impact. Take for example, you have taken the two groups, one exposed to the counseling and other were not exposed to the counseling, and we are seeing the behaviors. So that behaviors has already taken place because of the impact of the counseling. So we are comparing in this regard. Causal comparative research is a type of non-experimental research. Remember, okay, it is not an experimental research where the researcher investigates the effect of an independent variable on a dependent variable by comparing two or more groups. We will discuss in the lecture of this program, okay, what are basically the experimental researches. The things will be clear in that lecture, but here we can say that causal comparative researches or interrelationship researches are not basically the experimental researches. They comes under the category of the non-experimental researches. So in the context of the guidance counseling, we can take the example, the independent variable would be program participation, receiving the guidance or counseling services, and the dependent variable would be the outcome being measured. Okay, person is participating in the program. This is a participation in the program is an independent variable, and outcome of is measured like academic performance, social emotional development, career choices. If the choices of the careers have become matured, if the social and emotional development has shifted in positive direction, and if the academic performance has improved, then we can evaluate the we can compare the results. Okay, this is basic. We can conclude that this is basically the impact of the counseling sessions. The goal is to determine if the program has a causal effect on the outcome, meaning that program participation is associated with a change in the outcome, even though the researcher cannot directly manipulate program participation. The strength of the causal comparative research is its ability to explore potential cause and effect relationship. But it is important to acknowledge that it does not offer the same level of control as experimental designs, where it becomes clear which factor is basically causing or giving the result of the change in the behavior of the students. Here we can predict only, and with the help of any experimental researches we can lead to the actual conclusion. To strengthen the causal claims, researchers often try to control for potential confounding variables or intervening variables that might influence the outcome, such as pre-existing differences between the groups. Let us take an example here. The things will be clear to you. Okay, uh, in the context of the guidance and counseling, causal comparative studies can be valuable for understanding the impact of various programs on students' development and well-being, helping to inform program development and implementation. So, if we take the example in guidance and counseling, these studies are valuable for understanding the impact of various programs, and these impact can be evaluated in terms of the development and well-being of the students. This is also useful for the program development and its implementation. And the third aspects of it is basically related to the uh, correlational studies approach. Till now, we have discussed two things here. First of all, we try to understand the case studies, and there are many positives related to the case studies also, because it provides in-depth understanding where we collect the data and analyze the data and then evaluate the progress, and we also follow certain ethical consideration related to that. Causal comparative studies are also another example of evaluation, and here we try to find out the cause and effect relationship. At least we can get the idea, and these kinds of studies are quite common in guidance and counseling approaches. In evaluating the guidance and counseling approaches, to strengthen the third is and the third one is correlational studies approach. A correlational studies approach to evaluating guidance and counseling programs examines the relationship between different variables within the program. Correlation studies approach, as you can see, it is an evaluation approach again, and it examines the relationship between different variables within the program. There are many variables associated to the program. I will tell you the example of it also. It helps identify how participation in the program correlates with various outcomes like academic performance, career choices, or personal development. What is the relationship between the participation of the program and these aspects? Academic performance, career choices, or personal development. Means how these personal development is related to the participation in the counseling program. How these career choices are related to the participation. What is the relationship between the personality of the teacher, personality of the counselor, and the outcome of the program? What is the relationship of the infrastructure facilities and the outcome of the programs? What are the variables which are related to each other? As in a for the sake of understanding in general researches, we basically try to understand relationship between various variables and academic achievement. Take for example, intelligence is a variable which basically enhances the academic achievement of the student. If there is a positive relationship between intelligence and academic achievement, then we can say that to certain extent intelligence is related to the better achievement. This approach does not prove causation, does not prove causation, but it does provide valuable insights into the potential impact of the program. Now, correlational studies, an example of correlational study may be the relationship between academic anxiety and intelligence among adolescent. Is there any relationship between the intelligence and the anxiety? Whether more as intelligence increases, anxiety decreases, or as intelligence increases, anxiety is also decreases. So these are basically the interrelated or correlational researches. We try to find out the relationship between different variables. So the conclusion obtained by using coefficient of correlation may be positive and negative, and the degree of relationship between the variables may vary from perfect to high to average or no relationship. Correlational studies are particularly useful in making predictions also. If the researcher finds a substantial correlation between two variables, then it is possible for him to predict one variable from the other variable. Use of correlational researches, identifying potential impacts. By examining correlations, researchers can identify variables that seem to be positively or negatively associated with the program participation. This can help determine which aspect of the program might be most effective or where improvement are needed. So, correlational studies are basically useful to identify the potential impact of the program, where we are using the case studies, causal comparative studies, and interrelationship studies. They are also useful for developing hypotheses. The findings from correlational studies can be used to generate hypotheses that can be further investigated using more rigorous experimental designs like randomized controlled trials. So, we can also develop the hypothesis by using the correlational studies. Understanding program effectiveness. While not providing causation, correlational studies can provide valuable information about the potential benefits or drawbacks of a guidance and counseling program. So, effectiveness of the program is also evaluated by using the correlational researches. For instance, if a study shows a strong positive correlation between program participation and improved academic performance, it suggests that program may be contributing to the student's success. Examples of correlational researches are relationship between career counseling and career decidedness. A study could examine the correlation between the number of career counseling sessions a student attends and their level of certainty about their chosen career path. Okay, how much counseling sessions are basically assisting to the individual in moving to that direction. Then examples of correlation, other examples are correlation between guidance program participation and academic achievement. So researchers might explore the relationship between students' involvement in a guidance program and their grades, standardized test scores, and graduation rates. A study could investigate the correlation between participation in counseling and various measures of student well-being, such as self-esteem, anxiety level, or social skills. So, impact of the program can be learned in relation to these aspects, which are basically supposed to be the outcome of any program. But there are so many limitations related to the correlational researches. Correlation does not equal causation. We need to consider this aspect. Even if two variables are strongly correlated, it does not necessarily mean that one causes the other. There might be other factors influencing both variables. So cause and causation relationship is not basically evaluated by using the correlational researches. Limited control on over variables. Correlational statistics typically does not involve manipulating variables like experimental studies, and we will discuss in next lecture about these limitations. So it can be more challenging to establish cause and effect relationship by using these aspects. Here, now let us conclude our lecture. Correlational studies are a valuable tool for evaluating guidance and counseling programs. They can help identify potential relationship between program participation and various outcomes of the program. Guidance guide further research and provide insights into the program effectiveness. However, it is important to aware of the limitations of the correlational studies and to interpret the findings with caution, considering potential confounding variables and the lack of the causation, because all the factors cannot be evaluated by using these kinds of the studies, because they are not the experimental studies where we exercise more control on the variables. So with this we have completed our discussion. Thanks for your patience listening, and God bless you all.